Hey, what's up? It's Kit time for another video. Today, we talk about shore jigging rods. And I know that a lot of people have been waiting for this, and I'm quite excited to start. But before that, I'd like to thank today's sponsor. And this video and this whole series actually is sponsored by Barracuda Fishing Equipment. And well, if you know me, you know that I've been working with Barracuda for a really long time and done several projects with them. One of these projects was, of course, designing the UAE specific Studio Ocean Mark reels. So those reels, they were designed and sold in Barracuda. Okay. I've also done rod projects with them. And what else? Oh yeah, assist hooks and all that. Okay, assist hooks project, also with Barracuda. And what else? I think lures as well, or one lure. That's it. All right. So I've been working with Barracuda for a really long time. Really good friends with the management, and I'm proud to say that they are sponsoring the series on shore jigging. Okay. And oddly enough, also, okay, um, I'm happy to actually recall this, but I got the owner of Barracuda into shore jigging. Okay. So that's how far back we go. All right. So more about that later. And possibly one or two of the videos that we're going to be doing would be in the shop in Barracuda for this series. Okay. All right. So rods. Now, years ago, I had the chance to actually go into the rabbit hole and do a lot of work so that it's for a specific project. And that was for a rod that we were developing for this place for this specific purpose, shore jigging. Okay, so the findings, of course, is basically result of this rod. So it's not only that I'm talking about, you know, like what a good rod is and all of that. I actually have working experience in having a rod conceptualized, designed, manufactured, and sold to market, mass produced. Okay, so I'm not just talking out of my behind here. I'm not just saying that, oh, this rod is good, this rod is bad, and this is better and all this. I actually have working knowledge on the rod, okay, on rods and how they're built start to finish up until selling them. Okay. So yeah, I'm not just you know I'm not just pulling information out of my out of the air or out of my butt here. Okay, so part of the reason, part of the things that I actually done to get everything correct was to distill everything and define what shore jigging is. Okay, now by definition, shore jigging is when you're fishing with jigs from shore, plain and simple. But more than that, what a lot of people don't realize is that before they were called jigs, they were actually called casting spoons. So they're nothing but using old school, what we called casting spoons when we were younger. Okay. So I started using casting spoons when I was about 13. I am 49 as of this making. Okay. And at around the picture that I posted in the community post, okay, I was 19 then. Okay. So I've been doing this for about 30 years, just fishing with the jigs or casting spoons. I've been doing this for about 30 years. So that's longer than some people have been in puberty. Some or a majority of the chunk that are actually doing it these days haven't even been born yet, or weren't even conscious that they were around, or this thing existed when I started and have been enjoying them. Okay, I'm not saying that, you know, just because I have a lot of experience, I'm good. I'm not. I'm not an expert on that. Okay, I'm not. I never claimed to be, and never claimed to be a professional. But I know a thing or two, at least one correct thing about it, I guess. Okay, and this is like a few of these things I'm actually going to share with you guys. A little bit of a caveat. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional. So whatever you hear, and you know, whatever advice or things I say here, follow at your own risk. Okay, that's it. If it makes sense to you, hallelujah, go right ahead and do it. If it doesn't, that's fine. There are a lot of other experts that are more qualified than I am that actually do videos, or you can check the comment section because there's a lot of experts on there too. Alrighty, so what is shore jigging? As I have mentioned earlier, it's nothing but casting out spoons. That's it. Casting spoons, you know? So we're looking at, let's say, the very early ones. A, Yozuri Blanca. Metallic sardine is also another one. When I first arrived here, I was actually slinging metallic sardines over at a place called Jumeirah Beach. And I was catching really sizable barracuda and kingfish. And people have not seen anything like that. I'm telling you. Because it was also the first time that they've seen braid, okay? And they thought that it was kind of strange. So this was 2005, okay? So 2005, I was slinging lead in Jumeirah Beach. No one knew what braid was because I was using it. And then a couple of weeks after, I saw them casting 50-pound mono and really big 200-gram jigs on telescoping rods. That was funny, but it worked. It worked. Anyway, so by definition, you can say that all it is casting spoons. Now, the rod is very important when it comes to, it's a rod freaking video. So the rod is basically just a specialized item specifically made for casting what essentially are an advanced form of casting jigs. That's it. Okay? So there are casting jigs, or there are jigs that are made to flutter, slow jigs, and there are those that are made to swim in one shape or form when you are jigging them. Okay? So you have shore slow rods for slow jigs, and you have regular shore jigging rods for jigs such as these. And mind you, yes, you can cast something as big as this in shore jigging, and that's with rods like these. Okay, so heavy duty rods. Now, what's the difference between a specialized shore jigging rod and, say, something similar like a surf rod? You know, because with a surf rod, you can cast spoons, you can cast jigs. Essentially, again, by definition, this is a casting spoon. So what is the difference? Well, you know, a lot of people actually made it known in the comment section that they have different actions, they're optimized for jigs and all of that. Yes, correct. But see, here's the thing. You could do the same with a surf rod. But the main difference here is that it is optimized for casting because it is a casting discipline, as I've mentioned in the introduction. But it's optimized for this. Okay? Now, they have soft tips. And the reason why they have soft tips is because of this. If you're pulling this and you have a stiff tip, it tumbles. And then your assist hook will snag on your leader. So if you have a soft tip, it cushions every time you do this. Okay, so with your one pitch jerking, what happens is there is a tendency for the jigs to flip and cartwheel or somersault, and the assist hook will snag the leader. Obviously, that's not what you want. So softer tips. That's one major difference. The second major difference between that and slow jigging, short jigging rod and a, say, surf rod is the fact that surf rods are heavier. Okay, even the most lightweight surf rods are not designed to be held and work, you know, when you're working jigs, it's not designed for that. You'll find that specific shore jigging rods are light because, or lighter, because they're designed to be held. Now, if you see me in the comment section, this is why I always say that this is an objective factor. Okay, an objective factor, because it's one thing that you can measure weight, and it's very important because weight matters when you're holding the rod. This is why they're light, and this is why it's important that your rod should be light, balancing it for your liking so that you'd be able to last the whole session without getting tired. So first and foremost, the tip is different. Okay, it is softer so that the jigs won't tumble. This is the part where they say that it's optimized for the jigs action. Okay, and then two, it's lighter. Now, here's the thing. I did say that what matters with this whole thing is what you're casting. And when you're casting a stick bait, you're not shore jigging anymore. You're stick baiting with the same rod, with the same reel, because a rod with a soft tip is also ideal for stick baits. Okay, this is an OSHA Plugger Flex Limited. It is a short shore jigging rod, or you could just say it's a stick bait rod, because it is. And guess what? I have one of the best shore jigging rods here, right here. This is a Ripple Fisher Runner Exceed specific shore jigging rod. Okay, top end. A longer version of this is actually called a plugging rod. That's it. So basically, what shore jigging rods are just long stick bait rods. Okay, that's it. You can find that the same model or the same specs. Only this is a 10 foot 3 inch. There's an 11 foot version of this, and it's a plugger. It's a plugging rod. Same specs, same everything. Only the length is different. Even the recommended reel is the same, but it's a plugging special. Okay. Major Craft did the same thing with this version of Cross Ride before. Okay. Shore jigging. Okay. Same thing. Cross Ride. Same everything. Same exact color, blank, make, and everything. And the longest one that they had was an 11 footer, and it was also labeled as a plugging rod. So all it is a rod, a long rod, soft tip that is made so that it can work stick baits first and foremost, because guess what? Stick baits are more important in the Japanese scheme of things than jigs. Jigs actually, they're not high up in their list. And then jigs after that. Okay. Now, these are nothing but casting spoons. Okay. What do you do with spoons? Okay. And this is why I say that what matters is actually what's at the end of your rod. You have a surf rod, for example. Okay. You cast it out exactly like you do with a shore jigging rod. The only difference, because the tip is not soft, okay, you can't really jig it like you would normally do, okay? But what you can do is a straight retrieve. When you do a straight retrieve, the jig actually swims. So that's called swimming the jig, you know, a straight retrieve. And you can vary the speed to make it wobble, swim fast, make it swim slow, okay? And it'll have like a some like that action. Okay, it could be fast, it could be slow. You could adjust the swimming angle high up if you want it higher up in the water columns when you're fishing near snags or whatnot, or you could do it slower so that it actually hovers just under the surface. But this is exactly the same as what we were doing back in the day with casting jigs or casting spoons. Okay, there. So guess what? That, okay, it's not the only way. Now here's another one. Okay, you reel tight, jig on the bottom, boom, pull up, drop down, reel. That's called long fall. You can also do it on a boat, which is where normally you do it, right? But you do the same thing with the rod. Slowly, shoot, drop down, reel. Guess what? Pull up, flutter. Pull up, flutter. That's basically how it's done. So it is just presenting these jigs or casting spoons, whatever, in a diagonal plane. Okay, when you're conventional jigging or normal jigging, you're on a boat and you're trying to present it in a vertical plane. That's why it's called vertical jigging. Okay, so shore jigging is nothing but being like presenting it in a diagonal plane. Okay, nothing more complicated than casting heavy spoons. By definition, that's it. This is why I find it so funny when people start to argue like, oh, the rod has a special function and all this. Only for one retrieve. That's it. And yes, okay, granted, that is very important because, you know, that gives you a lot of, what do you call this? Options for how the jig moves. But it's not the only way. Okay? So even with specialized rods, you could do that, you know, cast it out and then reel it in. In fact, this is actually one of the ways that you should be working the jigs. So all it is a rod optimized for holding because they're lighter. And the rod has a softer tip so that the jigs don't tumble. That's all it is. Okay, let's not overcomplicate things because someone said that I've optimized this to be used with jigs, but that's all it is. That's all it is. Okay, that's it. Now, with the rods, when you're getting into this, because like again 101, so I would assume that you guys don't know anything and want to get in and want a very honest opinion on how these things go. Okay, so here it is. Now when you're buying rods and you're getting into this thing, I always say for all my fishing I invest heavily on reels more than rods, and this is the reason why. So just for the medium tackle, this is like I have 3 rods Okay, this one. Wait. Oh, this one. Okay, so this is an iron shooter from Yamaga. Iron shooter. Okay. It's part of the early plus series of rods. So iron shooter is optimized for using like jigs. And then this one, and then this one. Okay. Now all of these rods actually share one reel. Okay. So I have switched my rods 3 times, and I am still using my Twin Power 4000 for all those rods. Meaning that the rod technology has actually changed, but my reel stays relevant. Just as long as, of course, the level of the reel that you're buying is actually good enough so that even if the new technology comes, it's not obsolete. Now, if I bought like a reel, like a pen that's heavy as hell, you know, that's not going to work, because guess what? The rod and the reel is designed so that you hold it. Okay? Shore jigging has a lot to do with you holding your rod and reel and working it. The heaviest part of this whole thing is the reel. And lighter reels, guess what? They're more expensive. Lighter reels could either be the cheapest because they're made of plastic, right? And you don't want that. What you want is to actually have a metal bodied reel, like something like this, okay? Light, or aluminum bodied reel that's light, because that's what you're gonna use. Now, the reels that I use on these, and these are the medium sized stuff that I use, and this is stuff that I use up to 60 grams of jigs. Those I use a Twin Power 4000. Okay. Now the range that I spoke about earlier that you need to get into when you first join this whole thing, or when you get into this, is 7 to 35. Okay. So you have this. This is the Early Plus Explorer. My bait caster is also a 7 to 35. I have also a ballistic bait caster from Yamaga, and also a 7 to 35. And my Sky Road is also a 7 to 35. So they vary in length, but you're looking at 10 feet. Okay, so 7 to 35, the range, and up to 10 feet. There's 9'6" lengths, which are great. But see, the thing is, you need that 4 inches, and that translates to a bit more distance in your cast. And remember, this is a casting discipline. Whether you like it or not, you know, this is a casting discipline. So the rod length kind of matters. And a shorter rod will actually give you a little bit less travel distance when you're jigging. And sometimes that helps. Now, what also helps when it comes to length is having the rod long enough so that it will clear the line from the drop. Okay. Now here's the problem that I had before. Okay. I kept on having my line if you get your line and then you inspect it just after the leader, okay, take the line and see exactly the condition of the line, what the condition of the line is. In mine, it looked like it was cottoning up. You know, you look at it, you'll see like fibers sticking out. I was like, what the hell? I've just changed the line. And you know what? I kept on losing fish, but this is how it was. So I was standing here, right? Here, this is the drop. So I'm standing here. This is the drop right here. When I cast out, my line was actually abrading the side here. This ledge. And what happens was that my line was actually rubbing onto the ledge. So that's called lateral abrasion. So it's not abrasion wherein this is your line and it's going this way. The abrasion is actually going this way. And it's sand. Sand is actually quite sharp, sharper than most, experts' brains, unfortunately. Sand is really sharp. And guess what? Your line continuously goes like that. Now, the answer is a longer rod. So when you have a drop in front of you and you're casting out towards the deep, okay, and then your rod length is higher, it clears the line, okay? So as soon as your line goes like this, it clears the line off of the ledge, and that's very important. A lot of people don't like longer rods, so they have like, I don't know, shorter shore jigging rods, or they actually use other rods for shore jigging, and they don't prioritize the length. But that is very detrimental to the whole thing. So a longer rod, and this is why this rod is actually extra long. So remember that this is not for sale outside of the UAE, but this is why this rod is actually longer than 10 feet. Okay, it's about 11, 12 feet. It's 12 feet. Yeah. How could I not say that? It's 12 feet. I freaking designed it. So it's actually 12 feet total, but your fishing length from here all the way to the tip is 10 feet. Okay, it's actually 10 and a half. Okay, so it's 10 and a half feet from here, which is the usable length of this rod. It's 10 and a half feet. This section here is 1.5. Okay, so the reason why I designed it like that is because most rods, when you say 10 feet, this takes up some length, okay? And when you're jigging, there's a chance that you would hit that ledge. Now, we're fishing here, the environment here, there's actually a long flat and then it drops. So the longer the rod, especially when you're standing from shore, the longer the rod, the better the angle that it would present for the jig so that it doesn't snag. So 10 feet is better than 9.5. Never mind, forget this rod. It's not sold anywhere else. So, you can't get it. But that's the reason why longer rods are better. So we've dealt with the action, okay, the function, the length, okay? Now, let's talk about what you should buy, okay? So so far I've showed you this rod, okay? And then Yamaga, okay? Now, when you're first starting out, don't buy Yamaga, okay? Don't. Even if the experts are actually saying that buy Yamaga, buy Shoregun Evolv, palms, even if I'm saying that I'm using the 5G cross ride, okay, you can be perfectly okay with a mid-end rod, like a sub-brand from Major Craft is called Cross Stage, okay? The Cross Stage is a mid-end rod, and I think that you should, in my opinion, you should actually start there. Buy a good reel, okay? Now, I'm using a Vanquish. If I could tell you right now, invest on a Vanquish and you'll be happy, okay? Another rod is an Xsense. There's Daiwa equivalents, and you should actually look into that, because guess what? A Vanquish, 5 years from now, it's still going to be a Vanquish, okay? The rods 5 years from now, trust me, things will move on. It will be different, but you can still use the same reel on whatever rod that comes 5 years after. Okay? Now, remember, the reel is the heaviest part of the system, and you want everything to be as light as possible, because the lighter your setup is, the more sensitive it is. And there are some fish that would just, go up to the jig, suck it, you won't feel it. So the more sensitive or the more light your whole combo is, the better for you. Okay? Now, a Yamaga is light, a Palms is relatively light, Major Craft, light. There are other rods that are light but expensive. Don't get that, because if you're starting out, you're bound to probably break a rod or two. And that's the truth. I've done it. People have done it. Each and every single one of the shops that you will buy your rod from would be very happy, because if you buy a top-end rod outright, you're going to have to replace that. So I always tell people, start out with something in the middle first, because chances are you wouldn't even know what a good rod feels like. But if you start out with something that's mid-end and you learn the motions, okay, one of the most dangerous things for a rod is for the line to actually wrap the tip. And guess what? It happens more than people want to talk about. People have a tendency to whack their casts, and they like the sound that it produces, like, I'm telling you right now, that's the wrong way of doing things. The more you make that sound, the more energy the more energy is spent making that sound than having your lure go forward. You get what I mean? So a cast that doesn't make a sound is more efficient in getting the lure out there than a cast that actually makes a sound, because energy is spent to make that sound. Okay? So what do you call this? The rod itself, when you're actually casting it, okay, has to do a function which is load. So if you load the rod, it's like a rubber band or a catapult, really, when you're casting, so the rod actually does the work. It stretches or loads, okay, and then when you cast, boom, that rod will flex and then throw it. Choom. Again, it's a casting discipline. That's why it's pretty important. Now, if that line is at the tip, because a lot of people just do this, right? They don't check. They just go choo, wraps. And look, people can get careless. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that, I won't do it. Yeah, but we get excited, and when we get excited, when we see the water, we forget everything that we've learned. So it's better to actually just prepare for the worst, especially in your first year. So you get a good mid-end rod, and then you learn. My advice is always to start out with what you have. So if you have a surf rod, okay, put a jig at the very end. You just cast out and do the retrieve. I was telling you, just reel. Once you catch, it will give you confidence to actually say, like, okay, I want to get into this, and then you invest on a decent rod and reel. Let's say 60-40, or for me, it's like 70-30. 70% of my spend would always be on the reel. And then when I do that, once I get it, I can learn on this rod. And this is the same exact steps that I actually did with fly fishing as well. And guess what? My reels are still very much relevant to this day. Again, I go back to what I said before. So my reels, relevant, even if the rod technology has changed. The rod technology changes quite fast. So they're like cell phones. So you have a rod, right? Mid-end rod. You learn from it after a few months or a year. You'd say like, okay, I'm good with this. Guess what? You don't need to upgrade. You're done. You're good. Congratulations. You just spent less. But some people become experts. Okay? They become experts. They become professionals. And they actually, or actually they just learn. Some just learn. Some actually become experts and some become professionals. But some just learn. Okay? So for those guys that actually just learn, you need to go like, okay, I understand this. There might be like lighter rods. Or it could be that I want to see if there's something that's a bit more comfortable for me and stuff. Or, you know, you find the limitations. Okay, this rod, you know, I find the what do you call this? I find it too heavy and all that. Guess what? If you already learned the mechanics of casting, fighting the fish, and all this, you can upgrade. You know, you can sell this rod, or guess what? Congratulations, you have a backup rod. So all you have to do is just, you know, buy whatever you want. You go ahead at that time, buy a Yamaga, buy Palms, whatever you want. The, you know, the top end 5G, or you know, I'm not gonna lay out a buying strategy for you. You know, you can buy a Zenac or buy an Apia, whatever. You know, once you have that, you'll find that your horizons would actually stretch a bit farther. And buying a rod or buying fishing gear and putting them together, it's kind of like buying a camera. You know, it's like you have what do you call this? Prosumer, and then you have consumer, and then you have professional cameras. And you know, if you're in the consumer camera, you'll find that from consumer to prosumer, which is like the intermediary, right? What happens is that you'll find a really big leap from like the run-of-the-mill stuff, you know, like what do you call this? Like we're talking about the SLR cameras, right? Single lens reflex. So from the basic stuff that you find, all of a sudden, when you go prosumer, you have big gains. But guess what? From the prosumer to the professional, the gains are actually quite small. But those small changes, those small differences is actually what like the real professionals actually look for. And those are the things that are important for them. But guess what? A lot of people just stay within the prosumer space because majority of what you're looking for is there. And that is it. So this is like, take for example, what I'm saying here is pretty simple. From the cross ride, you upgrade to, let's say, the 5G. Major craft, Palms, they're in the same league. They're actually mid-end brands. The brand itself, mid-end, okay? When you're talking about Yamaga, top end. These are top end brands. So the cheapest Yamaga rods are probably as expensive as, if not more expensive than the top end major craft rods. So like something like this. It's probably like 1.5 times the price of this. Okay? And then you'll have brands like Ripple Fisher that are like a cut above even Yamaga. Those are the truly top end brands that are bordering towards customs. Okay? So there's no need for you to go there unless you're really looking for something specific. Okay? So this is why I'm saying that for a lot of people, the buck stops here. And you'll see me use a lot of this. Off camera, you'll see me use a lot of Yamagas, okay? Because that's like where my preference lie. But I have no qualms recommending, you know, these to people that are like in the intermediate level, okay? So again, just to recap, kind of like a buying strategy here already. When you're first starting out, okay, buy something mid-end. It could be cross stage from the cross stage line from major craft. Make all your mistakes there. Learn as fast as you can. As soon as you actually learn all the basics and stuff, training wheels protocol. There we go. Even Tony Stark does that for Spider-Man. Okay, so call it your training wheels protocol. Buy a mid-end rod, learn from that. Okay, and then once you find nuances that you like to upgrade, then upgrade to something like these. And guess what? These are actually quite close to Yamaga's. They're not the same, okay? They're not there. But it's like almost there. And majority of the people don't even want to move from there. And it's unbelievable, a $300 rod, let's say, $300 rod like this, and then it's like more than what you could look for. Okay, that's it. The buck stops there for, I would say, 99% or 90% of the people. A lot of people that are using like weekend warriors, like people that are using top end brands, don't even know why they're using that in the first place, or they don't even know. They don't have a solid reason why they're using that. Majority of the time, it's just people watching videos on YouTube, seeing that this guy uses it, and then they buy it. If you ask them why, there's a limit to exactly what they could answer. Like, take for example, for me, I'm using a lot of early plus. I have a few ripple fishers, and I have like a ballistic bait. If you ask me exactly what I want from those rods, I can actually tell you exactly why I chose those and not go up higher. Like, take for example, why do I only have one ballistic? Why do I have a lot more early pluses? So I can give you like the specific answer. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, this is an eradicator from Abu Garcia. Okay, I only use this for 20-gram jigs. That's it. Okay, because the feel is perfect for 20 grams. It's longer than usual at 11 feet, and it's a bait caster, so it means that I can control the descent because I mostly use that for long fall. Majority of the people that you will ask and meet, and they will ask, you have a conversation with them, and then you'll ask them what makes this rod good for, in your opinion, the rod that they're using. They won't be able to explain to you exactly what made them choose that and that specifically, because a lot of people don't have the luxury of actually juggling a few rods and testing out to see exactly what suits their what do you call this, their purpose. The fact of the matter is, a lot of people are saying that they're professionals or they're experts or they're good at this and that and that. They've only tried one brand, two brands, and everything. Guess what? I had to go through a lot, because for a lot of people it might be fun and games, but for me, I call this a job. In what I used to do before was a real job, so there's a difference, and guess what? Because of that job, I had the luxury of actually being able to, like, test things. You're open to a network. Even if you don't buy, you're open to a network that actually, like, okay, this guy has those rods and stuff. You could just go there and say, like, hey, let me test out this rod for a few days, and then you go and do it. It's as simple as that. And guess what? When you're in that kind of company, you could request some companies to actually send you stuff. And that's that. Like, literally, out of professional courtesy, some of them would actually say, like, yeah, sure. Obviously, majority would say no. But if they see that you're doing it, they see value in your feedback, and they will send you stuff. But that takes a lot of hard work, and that also takes a lot of kind of them to see that you're reputed to give good feedback. Yeah. So there's stuff like that. So what I said earlier, you know, I think I mentioned something, or if not, it was one of the videos that I shot earlier. When you're doing like the more advanced stuff and you're like in the current, like I'm not just saying that you're doing it, okay? Like if you're at the leading edge of things, it gets really expensive. Like take for example, you know, if there's a delay, okay? There's a delay when it comes to transmission of technologies. But if you're with those guys that actually field test, and you know, be in the current state of things, being there is very expensive. Okay, it means that since you don't have backing of a company that's on that edge, you're gonna have to buy your way in. And trust me, as soon as those, let's say, as soon as those rods get released, and you're first in line to get them, or reels and stuff, whew, you're gonna have to spend. Now, if you're lucky enough to have companies actually work with you, then it gets a bit cheaper. And that's the case for me, right? So that's how I'm able to actually get information, get gear that is current, sometimes not even in the market or not available openly. And then after that, I'm playing with it. Now, I'll be very completely honest with you guys. Whatever you see in the channel, it's not what I do, okay? The fishing that I'm doing is totally different from the fishing that you're actually seeing in the channel. Am I going to show the stuff that we're doing? Probably down the line. But when I show stuff that we're doing now, it would be current to whatever, you know, is going to be happening. It could be like the stuff that we're doing now, it would be something that would come out 3 years, you know, and then guess what? At that time, we would have moved on to do something else. So that's the truth of it. Alrighty. Anyway, as far as the rods are concerned, I really hope it's clear. I really hope that it helps. Again, this is not for experts. This is for people that are getting into this whole thing. For a recap, okay? So, Dima, thank you. So, as a recap, when you're buying rods, when you first start out, buy rods that are mid-range. It could be, by definition, it could be the rod itself is mid-end or the brand is mid-end. Once you actually learn how to cast properly, how to manage the fish, fighting it, and you know, once you find that the rod that you're currently using is limited, that's the time to upgrade. Don't buy expensive rods outright, because the chances of you breaking that while you're learning is actually quite high. That's why I always say invest on a good reel first before the rod. Okay. Now, these experts that are saying buy this rod because it's the best and all that, that's all in good. Maybe they're rich. Okay. Maybe they're rich. And guess what? If that rod that you buy breaks, they're not going to be the one who's stressed. It will be you. Okay. And it's far easier to stomach if the rod is actually, you know, mid-end than on the top end. I wouldn't recommend going low. Okay. That's a really, really bad thing, because if you're going lower than mid-end, you're probably going to have a miserable time, and you probably think that the rod just, or the whole thing just feels off, and you wouldn't want to, you know, be serious with this whole thing. Okay. Now, as far as rods are concerned, specific slow jigging rods are nothing but long stick bait rods, which also means that if you have this rod, you're not limited to jigs only. Remember, jigs are nothing but casting spoons, which means you could also use spoons and work jigs the same as spoons. And because the tip is soft and it is similar, if not the same, as a stick bait rod, you can go ahead and buy stick baits, not the lipped ones, yeah? It's the stick baits, Japanese wooden stick baits. Those really work well with this type of rod. Most rods will actually have labels that tell you exactly how big the casting weight is for stick baits. Okay, I'm gonna show you an example. This is the runner exceed because it actually shows the casting weight for both jigs and stick baits. So buy jigs, buy stick baits because and stick baits come in floating and sinking. Now, if you're new, buy sinking stick baits. Floating stick baits are actually very difficult to work. Okay, so this is again the runner exceed, and here you can see that it actually says plug 90 grams. Okay, jeez, why isn't it there? Plug 90, jig 130. Yeah, I can cast jigs of up to 150 grams on this because that's just how ripple fishers and Yamagas are made. And then obviously I can also cast stick baits of up to 120, 130 grams. I think Kelvin, if I'm not mistaken, he said like he the field tester for ripple fisher actually has tried up to 140 grams. I wouldn't cast that, but you know these guys are nuts, and they test these rods to the limit. So point is, you can cast some pretty mean sized stick baits on this. Check your rods on exactly what the capacities are, but having the option to cast stick baits is actually really good. And that about wraps everything up when it comes to rods for shore jigging. Again, I'd like to thank Barracuda for sponsoring the series of videos on shore jigging. Thank you for the members, of course, for the trust and helping the channel move forward. You can support the channel also by buying the hat, and should you consider memberships, that would be awesome. Alrighty. If you have questions, drop them in the comment section. I might have missed something, but pretty much in a nutshell, that would be it. And what else? That's about it, I guess. Alrighty. So that's it for now. Yeah, like, subscribe, and share. You know the drills. Alrighty. So that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Oh my God, almost 1 hour. Alrighty. See you in the next one. Class dismissed.